In many big social decisions, we face a question like this one. To what extent does a financial incentive crowd out or erode or corrupt a higher motivation? In Switzerland, a few years ago, they were trying to decide where to locate a nuclear waste site. They had, in effect, to decide where to put the debris from nuclear plants. No community wanted nuclear waste site in their backyard. The Swiss parliament identified a small town in the mountains as likely to be the safest place. But the residents of the town had to approve. And so a survey was taken before the decision was made, and the residents of the town were asked, if the parliament votes to locate the nuclear waste site here in your town, would you agree? 51% said yes. Then they asked a second question. They tried to make the offer more appealing. They said to compensate each resident of the town with an annual monetary payment of up to 6,000 euros. Then would you accept the waste site, the nuclear waste? Now how many do you think voted to accept? What would you guess? Just call out a number. 70%? 80%? 90%? The number went down, not up. From 51 to 25%. It dropped in half when the individual compensation was offered. Now, from the standpoint of standard economic reasoning, this is a paradox. Because most economists would predict that if you offer a financial incentive to do something, you will find more willingness to do that thing, not less. So what happened? Who has an explanation? Anyone? Yes, sitting on the aisle.
お金を払われることによって、その危険性の認識っていうのが高まってしまうと思います。もしお金を払うって言われると、あそこには何かに対する、報酬とか、賠償とか、そういうような認識が自分の中に生まれてしまって、危険なものっていう認識がなんか心の中に根付いてしまうというか、なので 25% に下がったのかと。
Good. Okay, that's one possible explanation. But it turns out that that didn't explain the Swiss vote. Because they asked people how risky they thought the nuclear waste site would be, and the estimate of the risk was about the same before and after the monetary offer. So there must have been a further explanation. Yes, in the middle, stand up.
ですね、最初は善意というか共同体のために一肌脱ごうっていう気持ちでいたのがお金を値段をつけられて貶められたような気持ちになったんじゃないかと思います。
And tell us your name.
美和子と言います。
Miwako. Miwako suggests something interesting, that before, when they were first asked, they did it for the sake of the general good, the common good. out of a sense of civic virtue, public responsibility. The nuclear plants they felt were necessary, the country as a whole depended on them. The waste had to go somewhere. They were willing to make the sacrifice to accept it. But when they were being offered money to make that sacrifice, they came to view it differently. Now it was a cash transaction. It was no longer. They were no longer being asked to sacrifice for the common good. They were being paid for a service. And they found that insulting, degrading. They weren't prepared to sacrifice, to impose a risk on themselves and on their families for money, even though they were willing to make that sacrifice for the sake of the general good. And that seems to be what was happening here. In fact, some of the people, when asked why they changed their minds, said, "We didn't want to be bribed." So when is a monetary offer a bribe, and when is it simply a financial incentive to do something useful?